On a brisk morning in December 2024, the bustling streets of New York City were jolted by an event that would soon dominate national headlines and ignite fervent debates across the country. Brian Thompson, the 50-year-old CEO of United Healthcare, one of America's largest health insurance companies, was fatally shot outside the New York Hilton Midtown. The incident occurred as Thompson arrived for his company's annual investor conference, a routine event that turned into a scene of chaos and tragedy. Surveillance footage captured the harrowing moment. A masked gunman approached Thompson from behind and fired multiple shots, leaving the executive lifeless on the sidewalk. The assailant fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of questions and a city in shock. Investigators quickly identified the suspect as 29-year-old Luigi Mangione, a former IT consultant from Pennsylvania. A 5-day manhunt ensued, culminating in Mangione's arrest at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. At the time of his capture, Mangione was found in possession of a 9mm handgun matching the weapon used in the shooting, a fake ID, and a notebook described by authorities as a manifesto, expressing hostility toward the health insurance industry and wealthy executives. The notebook entries revealed a chilling premeditation. One entry from August 2024 stated, "The target is insurance because it checks every box," while another from October detailed an intent to whack an insurance company CEO. These writings painted a picture of a man driven by a deep-seated animosity toward the healthcare system, viewing it as a symbol of corporate greed and systemic failure. As the nation grappled with the shock of the assassination, the Department of Justice, under the leadership of newly appointed Attorney General Pam Bondi, took swift action. Bondi, known for her tough-on-crime stance and close alignment with President Donald Trump, announced that federal prosecutors would seek the death penalty against Mangione. In a statement, she described the killing as a premeditated, cold-blooded assassination that shocked America, labeling it an act of political violence. Bondi's decision to pursue capital punishment was met with a mix of support and criticism. Advocates for the death penalty viewed it as a necessary measure to deter similar acts of violence, while opponents questioned the motivations behind the swift move, suggesting it was politically charged and aimed at bolstering the administration's tough-on-crime image. Meanwhile, a surprising development unfolded in the public sphere. Despite the gravity of the crime, Mangione began to garner a following. Social media platforms buzzed with discussions, memes, and debates about his actions. The phrase "deny, defend, depose," reportedly inscribed on the bullets used in the killing, became a rallying cry for those disillusioned with the U.S. healthcare system. Supporters viewed Mangione not as a cold-blooded killer but as a symbol of resistance against a system they believed prioritized profits over people. Fundraising efforts for Mangione's legal defense gained traction, with a campaign quickly raising over $47,000. Donors cited frustrations with the healthcare system and perceived injustices in the legal process as motivations for their contributions. This unexpected wave of support highlighted the deep-seated discontent many Americans felt toward the healthcare industry and the broader socio-economic structures. As the legal proceedings commenced, Mangione's defense team, led by attorney Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, prepared to challenge the charges. They argued that the case had been politicized, with the government using it as a platform to advance its agenda. The defense sought to block the Justice Department from pursuing the death penalty, contending that the move was more about political theater than justice. The stage was set for a high-profile trial that would not only determine Mangione's fate but also serve as a referendum on the nation's healthcare system, the criminal justice process, and the intersection of politics and law enforcement. As Luigi Mangione's trial loomed closer, his legal team ramped up its campaign to portray the government's actions as not just aggressive, but unconstitutional and politically motivated. The lead defense attorney, Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, a seasoned former prosecutor, began shaping a public narrative that the government's pursuit of the death penalty was tainted with ulterior motives. In a filing made before the Eastern District of New York Federal Court in early February 2025, Agnifilo and her team laid out their argument that Attorney General Pam Bondi's decision to seek execution was influenced not solely by the crime's severity, but by a calculated effort to win social media points and cater to the Trump administration's law and order image. The defense contended that Bondi wanted to execute Luigi Mangione for Instagram likes. That explosive phrase, instantly viral, struck a nerve in both legal and political circles. The defense motion cited public appearances, tweets, and Instagram posts made by Bondi and DOJ officials shortly after Mangione's arrest. Particularly controversial was a post that appeared on Bondi's official Instagram account, featuring a stylized American flag backdrop with the phrase "Justice will be swift" and the hashtag "No Mercy for Murderers," accompanied by an image of the scales of justice splashed in red. The defense team argued that such posts weren't simply about transparency or public information. They were part of a branding effort that transformed a federal murder case into social media spectacle. This case should be about law, facts, and justice, not optics, clickbait, or campaign-style rhetoric, the defense wrote. But the DOJ pushed back aggressively. In a statement, DOJ spokesperson Olivia Brown said, "The decision to seek the death penalty in the Mangione case is based on the overwhelming evidence of premeditation, public danger, and the political nature of the assassination. Any suggestion that it was for likes or shares is not only absurd, it insults the gravity of the crime committed." At the heart of the defense's motion was a broader constitutional question. Could the court allow the death penalty to proceed if the rationale was tainted by a public campaign strategy rather than strict legal merit? Pam Bondi, speaking on Fox News in March 2025, didn't hold back. This man targeted a business leader and tried to assassinate the American healthcare system in broad daylight. This wasn't just murder, it was terrorism. And we will not apologize for holding him accountable with the full weight of the law. But critics weren't convinced. Progressive legal scholars began weighing in, drawing comparisons to other high-profile capital cases that had become entangled in political agendas. Georgetown law professor Miles Bennett told MSNBC, "Even if Mangione is guilty, and it seems he is, the way the DOJ has handled this is highly problematic. The performative nature of the government's approach undermines public trust in the justice system." Behind the scenes, Mangione's team wasn't just preparing legal motions. They were actively working to shift public opinion. Agnifilo appeared on several news outlets, stressing that Mangione, while undeniably the shooter, was deeply troubled, suffering from untreated mental health issues and consumed by a worldview shaped by years of hardship and trauma. Luigi Mangione is not a hero. He is not a villain. He is a product of a system that failed him in every way, Agnifilo told CNN's Anderson Cooper. Now, that same system wants to use him to score political points. Meanwhile, the victim's family, the Thompsons, remained largely silent. But in a rare public statement, Brian Thompson's widow, Elaine, said, "Our family is still grieving. This shouldn't be about Instagram likes or hashtags. It should be about justice for Brian and for all of us who believe in law and order." As motions flew in and media coverage escalated, the case was becoming one of the most polarizing in recent memory. Mangione's image, once that of a shadowy, dangerous man, had begun to transform in the eyes of some into a symbol of systemic discontent and prosecutorial overreach. His online support base, initially fringe, grew steadily. From Reddit to TikTok, digital communities took sides, with hashtags like #JusticeForLuigi and #HealthcareAssassin trending alternately with #JusticeForBrian and #PamBondiDelivers. Every development in the courtroom was now a flashpoint in the nation's culture wars, with the fate of one man tied inexorably to much larger questions about justice, politics, and the digital age. By early April 2025, the federal courthouse in Brooklyn was the epicenter of what many were calling the most consequential capital trial in a generation. The people of the United States versus Luigi Mangione wasn't just a criminal trial anymore, it was a political war zone, a digital media circus, and a referendum on everything from healthcare inequality to the death penalty itself. Inside the courtroom, proceedings were intense and often emotional. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Matthew Riley, opened their case by walking jurors through the sequence of events on the morning of the murder. They played the surveillance footage again and again. The grainy video clearly showed Mangione approaching United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson from behind, raising a black handgun and firing 4 times in quick succession. The courtroom fell silent when prosecutors read excerpts from Mangione's notebook aloud. Insurance companies are modern assassins killing slowly through denial, delay, and lies. Brian Thompson is the face of the machine. His death will be a signal. Deny. Defend. Depose. Let the world see what they've made me. The prosecution's narrative was chilling and deliberate. This wasn't a random act of violence, it was an ideologically motivated assassination meant to instill fear and create chaos. The government's team repeatedly invoked the word terrorism even though Mangione had not been charged under any federal terrorism statute. But the defense was prepared. Karen Friedman Agnifilo mounted an aggressive challenge. She didn't deny that Mangione had pulled the trigger. Her goal was not exoneration but saving him from execution. In her cross-examinations, she relentlessly questioned the government's motives, painting a portrait of a Department of Justice that had weaponized tragedy to stage a political morality play. Attorney General Pam Bondi didn't look at the facts and make a cold, reasoned decision, Agnifilo told the court. She looked at Instagram. She looked at poll numbers. She looked at how to trend. To bolster her argument, Agnifilo introduced a trove of internal DOJ communications obtained through discovery. Among them were email exchanges between senior DOJ staffers discussing optics and social media engagement around the announcement of the death penalty filing. One message dated just days before Bondi's press conference read, "We need to get ahead of this strong language, maybe a Fox exclusive? The public wants blood. Let's give it to them." The courtroom buzzed with tension as the emails were read aloud. Judge Harold Eisner, a respected federal judge with a reputation for impartiality, appeared visibly concerned. "This court is not in the business of media strategy," he admonished both legal teams. Still, the emotional impact of the victim's death could not be ignored. The prosecution brought in Brian Thompson's family, his widow, Elaine, and his teenage daughter, Mia. Their testimonies were heart-wrenching. Elaine recalled her husband's dedication to healthcare innovation and the countless lives he helped improve. "He didn't kill anyone. He saved people. And now my daughter has to graduate without her father in the audience." On cross-examination, Agnifilo offered condolences but pivoted sharply. "Would you say Mr. Thompson believed in denying claims to patients who couldn't afford life-saving treatment?" Elaine shook her head. "That's not what he did." But for many in the public watching the trial through media reports and live-stream recaps, that question hung heavy. Had Luigi Mangione, a man with no prior violent history, simply snapped under the weight of a broken system? Or was he a cold, calculating murderer exploiting social discontent for infamy? Outside the courthouse, protesters from both camps clashed daily. One side held signs reading, "No death penalty, justice not revenge," while the other side screamed, "He killed for clout, he must pay." Cable news ran hour-by-hour commentary, with some anchors calling Bondi a hero and others accusing her of exploiting a tragedy for political branding. Pam Bondi, meanwhile, refused to back down. She issued a televised statement outside DOJ headquarters. "The American people deserve justice. This was not about healthcare. This was about a man who believed he was above the law. He killed to go viral. And we will not reward that evil with mercy." The story was now no longer just about Luigi Mangione. It had become a national reckoning. Was the justice system being used fairly, or was it being bent by the demands of social media, politics, and public emotion? With the trial moving toward its climax, both legal teams prepared for closing arguments and the American public held its breath. As the trial entered its final stretch, tensions hit a boiling point. Brooklyn's federal courthouse, already under heightened security, saw an increase in protester activity, press vans, and live-stream setups as the closing arguments approached. The Luigi Mangione case had stopped being just about crime and punishment. It had become a battle for America's soul, televised and tweeted in real time. Judge Harold Eisner made a stern appeal to decorum as court resumed. "This courtroom is not Twitter," he said. "We will deal in facts, not trends. In truth, not hashtags." The prosecution's closing, premeditated, political, and personal. Assistant U.S. Attorney Matthew Riley stepped forward for the government's final argument, painting Mangione as a dangerous extremist who used ideology as a mask for murder. With a large timeline projected behind him, he traced Mangione's radicalization, his surveillance of Brian Thompson's routine, his procurement of a Glock 17 handgun, and the chilling notes found in his apartment. "This was not passion," Riley declared, his voice echoing in the hushed courtroom. "This was a planned political assassination." He held up the now infamous quote from Mangione's notebook. "People will know my name. They'll finally listen. The world will see." "Ladies and gentlemen," Riley continued, "Luigi Mangione didn't just kill Brian Thompson. He killed every American's right to disagree without bloodshed. He thought a gunshot was louder than a vote. He anticipated the defense's emotional plea by acknowledging Mangione's hardships. Yes, he was angry. Yes, he felt unheard. But we do not allow grievances to become graveyards." Riley ended with a message directed not just at the jury, but the nation. "If this act does not merit the ultimate punishment, what does?" The defense's closing, "A man, not a monster." Karen Friedman Agnifilo stood up next, took a pause, and then softly began, "We are not here to argue that Luigi Mangione is innocent. We are here to argue that Luigi Mangione is human. She began by telling Mangione's story from childhood, a boy raised in Queens by a single mother, surviving on SNAP benefits, his father lost to drug abuse, his sister dying of cancer after years of denied treatment. He watched his family suffer not because of bad luck, but because of bureaucracy. He saw denial letters from insurers before he saw college acceptance letters. And he broke. Agnifilo addressed the crime directly. What Luigi did was wrong, horrific, tragic, irreversible. But executing him will not resurrect Brian Thompson. It will not heal this broken country. It will only perpetuate the cycle of violence. Then she turned her focus toward Attorney General Pam Bondi, accusing her directly of performative justice. You saw the DOJ emails. You saw the hashtags. You saw the statements made before Luigi even had a lawyer. They turned this trial into an Instagram reel. A death sentence shouldn't come with a caption. She concluded by challenging the jury's moral responsibility. You can show the world that justice is not vengeance. That we still believe in mercy even when it's hardest. Luigi Mangione deserves life without parole. But he does not deserve death. A jury divided and a nation waiting. After nearly 3 weeks of witness testimony, surveillance footage, psychiatric evaluations, expert panels, and emotional outbursts, the jury retired to deliberate. 12 Americans, diverse in race, age, background, entered the jury room knowing their decision would ripple far beyond Mangione's fate. The instructions were clear. Only if they unanimously agreed that the crime warranted the death penalty could Mangione be sentenced to death. Otherwise, life in prison without parole would be the default. National media outlets offered near-hourly updates while hashtags like #LuigiVerdict, #BondiTrial, and #JusticeOrSpectacle trended for days. Talk show hosts, influencers, and legal analysts debated late into the night. Among the jurors, deliberations reportedly became tense. According to a leak, later confirmed by court sources, some jurors questioned whether the DOJ's media strategy was enough to consider the case politically contaminated. Others were adamant that Mangione's detailed planning and ideological justification fit the definition of a capital crime. Outside, the protests turned uglier. Clashes between opposing demonstrators led to several arrests. Some held signs reading "Mangione equals martyr," while others shouted "Bondi's justice is America's justice." Pam Bondi, unmoved, appeared on Newsmax and stated, "Whatever the jury decides, we pursued this case with integrity and resolve." The message is clear: you cannot murder a leader and expect mercy. But in private, DOJ officials were reportedly concerned. If the jury spared Mangione, it would be interpreted as a repudiation not only of Bondi's decision but of the Trump administration's broader law and order platform. Inside his cell, Luigi Mangione reportedly remained calm, reading the Federalist Papers and letters from a Birmingham jail, depending on the day. When asked by a court officer if he had any final words should he be sentenced to death, he replied, "If my death gives someone else a reason to ask why things are the way they are, maybe it won't be wasted." On a chilly Thursday morning in Brooklyn, the nation came to a standstill as Judge Harold Eisner reconvened court. The jury had reached a decision after 4 days of deliberation. Cable news cut into regular programming. YouTube live streams saw hundreds of thousands of viewers. TikTok was flooded with countdowns and speculations. 12 jurors entered the courtroom with solemn faces. Luigi Mangione, in a dark suit and shackles, stood flanked by his attorneys. He looked thinner than when the trial began, but composed. The foreperson handed a slip of paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Eisner read aloud. "In the matter of the United States versus Luigi Mangione, we, the jury, having found the defendant guilty of all charges, unanimously sentence him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." A collective gasp spread through the room. Elaine Thompson, widow of Brian Thompson, wept silently. Mangione's sister, seated in the second row, broke down in tears of relief. Luigi closed his eyes briefly, then turned to his attorney and whispered, "Thank you." Pam Bondi, watching from the DOJ's satellite office in Washington, D.C., was briefed immediately. Within 30 minutes, she was live on Fox News expressing disappointment. "While I respect the jury's decision, I remain steadfast that the death penalty was appropriate. This was not just murder, it was ideological warfare. But the system worked and we move forward." Her critics, however, were quick to pounce. Progressive lawmakers and civil rights activists celebrated the verdict as a moral victory and a rejection of what they called Bondi's brand of social media prosecution. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley tweeted, "Justice is not revenge. The jury saw through the performative politics. We must build a system rooted in humanity, not hashtags. On the streets of Brooklyn, protesters from both camps reacted with mixed emotions. Supporters of Mangione saw the life sentence as a humane outcome in a deeply broken system. Others were furious that what they called a cold-blooded killer had escaped execution. But while the courtroom phase had ended, the political and cultural battle had just begun. Within weeks, congressional hearings were announced to review whether DOJ prosecutors had engaged in inappropriate social media engagement or public narrative manipulation. Internal DOJ documents revealed during the trial emails discussing likes, optics, and trends sparked renewed criticism of politicized law enforcement. A New York Times editorial titled "Justice in the Age of Instagram" asked bluntly, "Is the American justice system immune to the virus of virality?" Legal scholars across the country began referring to the Mangione case as a landmark moment in the debate over capital punishment, mental health, and the intersection of politics with public prosecution. Professor Randall Atwood of Georgetown Law remarked, "What made this trial historic wasn't the crime, it was the environment in which it was prosecuted. Public opinion was a co-counsel. Hashtags became evidence. The courtroom became a stage." Meanwhile, Luigi Mangione was transferred to USP Florence Admax, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, where he began serving his life sentence under strict confinement. In a statement released by his lawyer, Mangione said, "I did a horrible thing and I will carry that weight until my last breath. But maybe, just maybe, this trial will make people ask why someone like me broke. That's not an excuse. It's a hope." Pam Bondi's political calculus. In the days following the verdict, Bondi's public appearances increased. Though she expressed disappointment in the outcome, her tone shifted subtly. Instead of dwelling on Mangione's sentence, she emphasized her role in sending a message. This administration took a stand. We showed that targeted violence against leaders will not go unanswered. That's leadership whether the sentence was death or not. Insiders within the Trump administration confirmed that Bondi's name had been floated for a possible vice presidential slot in 2028 or even a Senate run in Florida. Her tough-on-crime posture played well with a specific voting base. But others in the party worried her overreach in the Mangione case may have alienated moderates and civil libertarians. A political cartoon in The Atlantic summed up the sentiment. It depicted Bondi staring at an empty electric chair with a phone in hand, saying, "At least the post got 2 million likes." Beyond the courtroom and the Capitol, the trial sparked real conversations across dinner tables, classrooms, and mental health forums. Was Luigi Mangione a symbol of broken systems? Or a cautionary tale of how far rage can carry someone? Universities began holding symposiums titled "Justice and Social Media: Lessons from the Mangione Trial." Documentaries were already in development. Streaming platforms raced to lock down rights to trial footage, courtroom transcripts, and exclusive interviews. One documentary, tentatively titled "Viral Justice: The Mangione Case," featured split-screen commentary from Brian Thompson's family, Mangione's defenders, DOJ insiders, and protest leaders. In a now viral clip, a healthcare worker who had once been denied cancer medication due to an insurance policy clause remarked, "I'm not justifying what Luigi did, but for a moment, the world finally listened to someone like him. And that scares people more than the murder did." Final thoughts, the trial that reflected a nation. The trial of Luigi Mangione will be remembered not just for its legal outcome, but for what it revealed about American society in the 2020s. The tension between law and media. The power of narrative in the courtroom. The moral ambiguity of justice in a country defined by its contradictions. As one juror anonymously told the Washington Post, "We didn't just decide Luigi's fate. We debated who we are as a country. And that perhaps is the truest verdict of all."